So it's Tuesday, March 12th. I'm calling to order the Jonesboro Land Bank Commission. Jonathan, can we do the roll, please?
All right, Ms. Durham,
Present.
Mr. Hurton,
Here.
Mr. Hollywood,
Present.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Mr. Mills.
Present.
Mr. Moore,
Present.
Mr. Osment,
Present.
Mr. Warner,
Here.
and Mr. Zolper.
Here.
All right, everybody's here.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for being here. This is good that we have the whole commission. Have Deanna here with us as well, if y'all don't know. You want to maybe just introduce yourself and tell them what you do real quick? Do you care?
I am Deanna Hornback. I'm the finance manager for the city of Jonesboro and the interim director as of last Friday. So this is my first meeting for the land bank, and I'm getting up to speed with some things that Trevor was handling prior to me being. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Keith, thank you for being here as well. So moving down, we have the minutes of the last meeting. Have you all take just a minute to review those, please?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve February 2019 minutes.
And we have a motion to approve from Mr. Hollywood and a second. Who seconded? Dennis. Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Anybody want to look through? All okay with it? So we'll vote on that. Anybody opposed to accepting the minutes as written? Okay, they passed. Good, thank you. So now we're going to move into old business, and I'm just going to turn this update over to Jonathan and let him tell you a couple of things here.
1444 West Huntington. This is the one across from the Dollar General near the corner of Huntington and G Street that we've had questions about the past couple of meetings. Long story short, I met with a few developers and I spoke to the adjoining property owners. I believe it's a tax service at the actual corner, and there was a church on the other side. I didn't get much feedback from developers for that lot, and I got a lot of interest from the church. And so the tax company said they didn't want it and they weren't interested in doing any sort of sale or anything. So the only interest I got was from that church, and they would like to turn it into a parking lot. So my recommendation is that we just leave it alone. In April, it's going to go up for a negotiated bid. And I told the pastor of that church that he should just make a bid to the state land commissioner himself, and we could just leave it alone and let's move on. That way they can have it and turn it into a parking lot if they want to.
So unless anybody has a question or wants to have any more action on this property, we're going to take it off of our agenda in the future. Anybody have comment? Okay. Jonathan, go ahead.
501 Marshall, this is the first foreclosure. Heather can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this was sent to a private law firm. Is that correct?
Yes, and he indicated he would be filing that lawsuit within the next week or two, so fairly quickly, before the next meeting.
So hopefully at our next meeting, we can have a better update on that. I think the idea of maybe going forward, is that going to be a practice that we do, kind of giving it to a private firm? Or?
Yes, his name is Bert Newell, and he's in Hot Springs and has done a lot of this work for the city in the past. So that's who, for the foreseeable future, that's who's going to handle the foreclosure actions.
What was his name?
Bert Newell, Newell.
Okay, thank you. So anything else about 501 Marshall?
Nope, we'll have a better update at the next meeting.
Just a housekeeping note, and I should have said this at the beginning. When you do speak, please speak, turn on your microphone and speak into it, because this is a recorded meeting, and so we need to be sure everybody can hear. And Dina, if you have something you want to get in the record, you'll have to. Thank you. Okay, Jonathan.
The third one on C, 7 and 109 North Bridge, I'm going to skip over that later in the meeting. We're going to talk about that. So I'm going to skip one and we can move on to the state land auction.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the state land auction for just a minute. Jonathan.
Long story short on this one, I met with the city attorney's office. I think I ran this by at the time Trevor, and I don't know if Dan has had a chance to see any of this stuff or not, but out of all 7 properties that the city received a letter about saying that we had an interest in, The rest of them had some sort of mortgage or mechanics lien or some other priority lien that would be placed ahead of the city. So it's not going to do us much good to, make a bid for $4,000 to try to get a piece of property if we're going to have to turn around and pay a $28,000 IRS lien. And so the only one that we saw and that I looked at was 1506 Pratt Circle. That is the only property that according to the title commitment, didn't have any other outstanding liens, mechanic liens, mortgages, IRS issues. So that's the only one that I would recommend that we go after. And I would recommend that we just make the minimum bid. Approve me, I don't know how we want to do it, but approve me to at least make the bid of $4,642. And essentially what'll happen is, and I know we had some concerns about this earlier, but if we are the winning bid, the city will write a check for the purchase price. And then next year, the state land commissioner will send us our lien money back. So we will be reimbursed a significant portion of this money if we are the successful bid.
So let me structure this conversation for just a second. So first of all, does anybody have questions or comments about the land auction in general? And I'll open that up with this question. So if we're the second lien, you mentioned the IRS as an example. So someone, I think maybe Ray or Jeremy mentioned the last time, when these things go through auction, do they come out the other side of the auction clean or not?
They don't.
Okay, explain that.
The minimum bid at the state land auction is going to be any encumbrance on any lien, any taxes, any interest and fees. It's going to be the sum of all of those things for all certified lien holders. It has to be certified. So the aggregate of that price is going to be your minimum bid. So, and anyone who has a certified lien will have their lien satisfied if it's sold at tax sale or in the 2-year period following the tax sale. You can, if it doesn't sell at the tax sale, then there's a 2-year period where someone can submit a written offer and buy it for that minimum amount. The problem comes in when it doesn't sell during that 2-year period and it sells in a good faith offer after the 2-year period. Someone could buy the property for $50, but any certified liens will go with the property.
Even in that setting?
Even in that setting, yes.
So if you buy the property for $50, what happens to those liens?
They go with the property. You
And so
would get a
they're
bill
still
for that,
encumbered.
yes.
And so if you wanted to do something with the property,
You have to-
you'd have to pay those liens?
Yes.
To whoever they are?
Yes.
Is that right? Does
Yes.
everybody have another question along those lines?
I just want to
Dennis,
point
I
out,
know you got this. Lawyers get this stuff, so,
I really actually don't. I actually don't deal with this stuff.
okay.
I've got all the information here in a packet, so y'all can look at it while we're
So
talking.
let's move then down this list of properties. And so, Jonathan, in your estimation, the one we need to discuss is B, correct?
Yeah. So 1506, it should be the second one in the packet. Just to hit on them, 651 West Huntington is at the very top. Again, I wouldn't recommend going for that one because there was some issues. B, which is 1506 Pratt Circle.
Keith, you,
This is the one that I would recommend. I highlighted, you can see there where it says municipal liens.
second page.
And then you can see the total that's going to be due. So give or take, if the city was the successful bid on this property, it would cost the city around $1,400, $1,500, give or take, for this lot. Whereas a private citizen, if somebody wanted to buy it, they'd obviously have to pay the full amount. So this would be the only one that I would recommend that we go after. The rest of them, like I said, you can look through the packet, and I've highlighted the lien cost and all that stuff.
Am I correct that the commissioners have received information from you about these properties?
I know I sent out the title commitments. I believe I sent them out to Dennis specifically. I know that.
Okay.
And I thought I included everybody in them.
I thought you did too, but So do you all have questions, comments? You want to do something about this?
Well, I do. It's just, I expressed this to Jonathan a while ago. Brent and I drove around and looked at all this stuff a while ago. We talked about focusing in on certain areas and trying to make an impact. And we don't have unlimited funds. If we buy this from the city, or we buy this, the city gets reimbursed the $4,500. Doesn't necessarily mean the land bank gets the $4,500 back from the city. I mean, we're in a position where we're running at a deficit, the city is, so we don't have an abundance of cash. I don't know what that impact would be of us, other than the city getting their money back. I don't know what the impact of, from the land bank's perspective of us, if we're trying to make impact in certain areas. I don't know how that, I mean, I'm questioning what our role is here, what we're supposed
No,
to
I
do.
think it's a good question,
Because it's
a worthy question.
It's out there. There's a pretty decent house on the left-hand side of it, and to the left of that house is a pretty nice house. Across the street, there's a bunch of mobile homes in different states of repair. We're not going to probably buy anything else up there, so that's just my concern.
My thing is,
So let
regardless,
me ask I'm sorry, Jeremy, one quick question to Ray, if y'all throw it around. So this is, my understanding, is north of our impact area, North Jonesboro. Is that correct?
It's, if you go to the Old North School, that road that runs east and west, whatever that is, you go north of that, out Patrick, probably a mile from there. There's a new subdivision on the left that I think is Section 8 housing maybe, and there's a senior project just south of that, and the neighborhood is back east of there. It's an older neighborhood that's been there forever and ever, but it's way north of
So
where
just to clarify for Heather and Deanna, so early on in the land bank's inception, when we first started meeting as a commission, we designated 3 different areas of as Ray called it, impact or revitalization. North Jonesboro, but not this far north, correct me if I say it wrong. Along the corridor to ASU is part of that. And then the West End neighborhood was the other, and then Old Nettleton area was the other. So those were the things where we wanted to try to focus on revitalization. So if I said that wrong, y'all correct me, but I think that's my memory serves on that. Jeremy, you have a comment? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, you're fine. My comment was just going to be, if we're worried about the city being reimbursed for those municipal liens, it's going to happen regardless if we buy it or somebody else buys that property. We're going to get reimbursed for that. So, I mean, I'm not sure if we're the ones that want to turn around to reimburse the city for those liens, which technically we would be as the commission, or if we'd be better off waiting to see if this property sells at the auction and then somebody else turn around and develop that property and reimburse the city for those.
Any other questions, comments?
I noticed here that
Jeff?
this location is right along that main drainage ditch. Do we know whether that's in flood?
I had a conversation, and I can't tell you yes or no. I've had a conversation about all of these properties at the same time about that. I can get that information to you. And if it's got flooding issues, obviously, then it probably won't sell at the auction. Who knows? But I'll get that to you. I'll get with engineering and send that information to you.
Okay.
Jonathan, you have
Mr.
other?
Chairman,
Yes, Dennis.
do we need a vote on whether we want to purchase Pratt Circle or not?
Well, I think I'm kind of gone out of order, as you're aware. I was going to let everybody kind of ask their questions and give out some information, and then if you all feel like there is some action to be taken, as of right now, we're not going to do anything about this without some approval from the commission.
Okay, so we don't
That makes some
need to
sense.
make a vote against it or for it, just.
No, I'd say this is for informational purposes for at the moment until someone does make a motion if they desire to. Does that sound fair?
Fine with me, yes, sir.
I will need a motion if we decide to do it to take to council.
Absolutely.
The city council is going to have to approve this if we decide to spend money.
And I'll throw out just one other comment, not to open up a big discussion today, But there is some probably need for us as a commission to discuss our role a little bit more in these areas. And that is that, as you're aware, the city has numerous properties sitting out there that some are, if you will, earmarked for future projects, and some are earmarked that they could be sold if someone made an offer. And right now, the city does not have an entity that buys and sells and inventories properties. And so there's going to probably end up being some discussion between us as a commission and maybe the city council and the mayor about whether that would be one of the roles we want to decide to take on later. But I'm not asking you to do anything about it today. I'm just throwing out as information in the interest of being transparent.
And it's just my opinion, but I think we could do both. I think we can look out for the city's best interests and still operate within the guidelines that the land bank is trying to focus on, especially obviously with our finance represented. They understand the situation. And I think if it's a good deal for the city to get the money back, I don't think that it would be a bad deal for the land bank to do that. Does it take away funds that we could focus in on other areas? Possibly. But I think finance would understand that, and we could work with them, and we could work with council.
And I agree with some of that. And the other thing I would just throw out, if you did decide to take action on this particular property, as you know, in the last several meetings, we've had what we were calling test cases. 827 Warner is one, and I think you're going to be very pleased with the success of that. The second thing is this foreclosure. We did one. Heather, your office helped with that, just to make sure we know what we're doing, and that and these are low risk moves that you all have made as a commission. And so I would throw out that if we want to get our feet wet as a commission about the state land auction, this Pratt Circle property might be one that you could do with a pretty low risk to the city or to the land bank. So I'll just throw that out, and then it's your pleasure what you want to do about it.
Jonathan, if we ended up purchasing.
Ran, is your mic on?
Yes, I
Thank
think it says on.
Okay.
If
All right.
we ended up with the Pratt Circle, what do you foresee us doing with it?
Y'all said y'all went by there and looked at the neighborhood. There's not, I mean, the houses aren't bad, right?
No.
I would see we could, I think it would be a win for the city if we could sell it for anything as little as, $1,500? That's the true cost that it's going to be for the city. And I think as long as the flood issues and things, developer side of things worked out, I think it would be relatively easy to find somebody who would want to build a single family house on a lot that costs them $1,500.
It is, it is buildable.
But I'm going to check. He asked about the flooding issue.
As far as size,
Yeah, I would say, Ray, I'd say it's buildable.
Yeah.
It's a flat lot. There's two houses that on one side of it, there's a pretty decent house, and there's another one across the street are mobile homes that are in various states of repair. A couple of them look like they're about to fall in. So it's worth, maybe drive by and see what you think about it.
But the way it relates to us is my question I'd have to answer, could I sell it for $1,500 or more?
Got it on Google Maps.
Because that's the true cost to the city. And I think based off what I'm hearing from Ray and from you is when y'all went by there and looked at it, I think, especially Ray as a developer, I think we could find somebody who would build on it if I sold it to him for $1,500. No promises, obviously, but that's how I feel.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I might say something. Ray, I agree with what Ray's been saying, because the way that, if I understand the way these tax sales work, okay, we're going to spend $5,000. We get back $4,000. So the city's out $1,000 just for figures, for the purpose of easy figures. So, okay, we got $1,000 in a piece of property that's not in our area of concern. And we say, well, yeah, but somebody can go out, we can probably sell it for $1,100 to some developer who's going to put a house up there. Maybe, maybe not. The problem is that our role? I mean, are we getting money back to, or is our role to get money back to the city on these tax liens, or is our role to rehabilitate an area or to revitalize an area, whatever term you want to use, and buy property in that area in order for us to put together maybe something that would be beneficial to not only the city, but to the people within the city? That's my concern.
I think our role is to continue to go back to our central premises, and that is to acquire properties.
But it should be purchases with an objective in mind in regards to that. It's not just, I don't see this as just going out,
Excuse me.
I mean, just going out and buying just blanket properties just to have an inventory with them. I think we need to have in mind what we're going to do with those properties. And I think Dennis made an excellent point in regards to, you know, are we here to basically help the city recoup liens and recoup money that is owed to them, or are we here to, you know, focus on certain areas of the city? And that's where I kind of get confused at sometimes also is the $1,500 or $1,000 actual cost to the city. So are we talking about the actual cost to the city, or are we talking about the actual cost to the land bank? Because the actual cost to the land bank, it looks like, will be $6,099 for this property. So
We get our money from
I
the
would,
general fund.
well, I would make this comment. I don't know if it's an argument, but a comment. The city is the land bank and the land bank is the city. Because right now, we don't have a separate financing situation, and we might at some point. But Dan, I make an address, we don't want to put you on the spot with you being on this job since Friday, but the bottom line is that money going back to the city, in a sense, you could argue helps the citizens of Jonesboro as well. I mean, you can make that argument.
I just don't.
I'm not advocating we do this. I'm just saying I think we do need to have a discussion later on, probably what our role is. And I would ask this question, I guess, Dan, I have to ask of you since you're the city official, or Jonathan. We don't have an entity in the city right now to probably go to this auction and bid on it unless the land bank's that entity, or am I wrong about that?
And one other thing too,
Just a question.
No.
this is just an open statement, and Deanna Finance could probably better explain it, but Trevor and Bill, when we first created this, they did create a line item for revenue. And I believe that revenue would come back to that line item in the land bank. At the end of the year, it would be then deposited into the general fund, just like every other department. But there is a revenue line item. And so if we got this property and we brought it into the land bank, and just to keep the numbers easy, we put $1,000 into it, and we was able to sell it for $5,000 or $2,000, the additional money would go back into our revenue account, I believe.
And I would add too that there is one other small point to be made. Again, and don't mistake my comments by being advocating to do this or not do this. I really want you all to do what you believe is. I'm not trying to influence that. But here's the comment, and that is that if once this is in our inventory, we do have the opportunity to put an RFP attached to it. And so we can positively impact that neighborhood, even though it is outside our area. It also brings up the point that it sounds like maybe that we need to have some code enforcement presence in that neighborhood based on your comments as well. And so those two things do, in my mind, meet what we're trying to do, and that's improve a neighborhood and make it better. Now, there's no question it's not within our area of focus. It goes back to James's comment. However, our primary goal is to acquire properties and to make a neighborhood better, even though this one may not be in our area. So just things to consider.
All I would add is, in the beginning, and I'm not trying to be adversarial, but in the beginning, we talked about being focused and focused in on certain areas, and we can make an impact. And I just don't see how we make an impact buying one lot in a subdivision that's I don't see other opportunity. I mean, maybe there are other opportunities. I see the vision on Bridge Street. If we parcel enough together that you could get some real momentum on that. I see if we go into a neighborhood and we can parcel a bunch. I see the deal like the house we bought over there. I get that.
It's going to make a difference over there.
I honestly, and I don't mean this the wrong way, I don't drive out there and Brent saw it, and I mean, I want him to be, I don't really get how we get an impact other than a mechanism to collect a tax and get the city some money back in the kitty. I just don't see how that's gonna.
Well, in an effort to close this discussion, let me throw this out. Does anybody else have any comment or question about the concept of this or this particular property at this time? So why don't we leave it at this? This is valuable discussion. I appreciate everybody's thoughts. Let's just think about our role maybe in the future, like you just, alluded to, Ray, and we'll see where we are. And if I don't hear a motion to take any action on this property, we're going to move forward unless you have other comment or discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I don't have my calendar. Are we going to have a meeting before this state land auction on Wednesday, April 17th?
If you don't make a decision today, even if we'll have one more meeting in April, but the problem is I have to get approval from city council. So if you don't make a decision today, then by default, that is a decision. And the answer is no.
Because when the next city council meeting.
Yeah, the next city council meeting is on the 19th, but it's not really the council meeting per se. It's y'all only meet one time a month. So if I wait till April 12th, then try to get it on a council meeting, we're not going to get done before the 17th.
Dennis, did you have
Purpose of making a motion, which is typically in the affirmative, I'll make a motion that we purchase the property at 1506 Pratt Circle for the minimum bid of $4,642.01.
Second that motion.
But it's 6,000.
But I think the minimum bid's going to be the 6,000.
Bid is 6,000.
Oh, 6,000, is it?
Yeah.
I was just looking at my sheet. Okay.
$6,099.
The number on your sheet is just a reflection of the municipal liens, how much the
Okay.
city already has on it. The actual opening bid is on the packet at the bottom where it says total due,
Go at 6,000.
$6,099.93.
Dennis, do you want to move to do that or no?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. So now we are officially discussing whether we're going to buy this property.
How can we find, so we're still not sure if it's in a flood zone or not.
What I would do is if y'all vote and let's say y'all approve it, I've still got to get permission from the city council.
I would like to, if you're leaning toward favoring this, Jeremy, maybe we could offer an amendment to Dennis's motion with some stipulations to protect the city and the land bank as a possibility.
Just add that it's not in a floodplain. Or add that there's no flooding or drainage issues. Something to that.
I don't have any problem with making that amendment, but again, you're going to have to get the city engineering involved if you're saying
Yeah.
there's going to be no flooding or no drainage problems at all, so.
Well, they'll look at it. Roger, in engineering, like I said, I've talked to him a couple times. I can't remember how our conversations went on all these. I'll send out an email confirming the information that I get so that everybody's aware of it.
Why don't we just stipulate it that it's buildable?
There you go.
James, you accept that as well?
Second. Yes.
Okay. Other questions, comments, please be candid, because again, I think some of the comments have been made are really valuable.
I would just say this. It's $6,000, $6,100. I guess we've got a $30,000 budget. I don't think there's a guarantee that this money gets put back in the land bank. The city's running at a pretty big deficit. So, I think their budget, putting money back in the land bank may come way behind personnel issues or whatever. So you got to be careful with what we got. I just don't see the impact, but that's just my opinion. So.
anything?
I believe when you sell through the state land commissioner, there's a 1-year redemption period,
No, it's not.
90 days. So 90 days after the sale, we would be able to do something with the property, but we don't want to do anything with it during that 90-day time period.
Well, it's a 10-day redemption period, but then a 90-day litigation period. So the property owner has 90 days to challenge the sale. Like 10 days to pay the taxes and redeem the property, 90 days to file a lawsuit and challenge the sale.
Okay, any other discussion or questions?
I understand, if this was in one of our areas that we had deemed where we wanted to be, and we had 3 or 4 lots around it, I could see where we could make a run at this. I just don't ever see us buying another piece of property in this area, and I feel like we're buying it, somebody had said a while ago, just to build our inventory. I'm just scared that that's $6,000 that we could use somewhere else.
I'll comment too. We're not going to have any problem building our inventory if that's
Right,
someone's
correct.
concern. So I'll just throw that out as a piece of information. Anything else? Any other comment, discussion?
And I'm just going to say this.
Jeremy?
I feel like we need to be a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars here. And the last thing I want to do is us end up on the front page of the paper at the end of the year showing this huge deficit that the Land Bank Commission has garnered. And because the city's not in a position to be able to give us back the money they've recouped from the municipal liens and whatnot. I think if this property a few years on down the road where we had some, money and we've already focused on an area and we were able to kind of spread out a little bit, might be a possibility, but I'm just not seeing it. Not seeing it right now, at least.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I move for the question.
Okay, and we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of Dennis Ober's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, the motion doesn't carry. And thank you all for your candid discussion. I think it's valuable. Again, keep in mind that I don't know how you all feel, but I still feel that we're novices and we're learning, and so I appreciate all that. Anything else on the state land auction, Section B? Heather has something she
Well, I
wants.
just wanted to remind you that on a property like this that you're not going to purchase today, we've decided not to purchase that property. If it doesn't sell at auction and it sits for 2 years, after the 2-year period, if it's still available, we can, if this is something we still have our eye on and want to do, we can submit a reasonable offer for that property and see if we can get it, for a much lower price. It will come with the encumbrances if they've been certified, but that's something you can always keep it on the back burner and keep an eye on it if it doesn't sell and sits there for 2 years.
And I think best case scenario is somebody buys it out of the auction, turns around, and they build something on it with us. It's a win-win. The city will turn around and get their liens reimbursed. Our money was never used for it, and something was built on that lot, which is very possible here.
Thank you very much. So,
I do have a question, right, Brent?
James?
Is it structurally sound? Is it boarded up?
It's on the Pratt Circle.
Yes.
It's a vacant lot. It's just a lot.
Okay.
so there's not a structure on that at all, I don't think.
No.
Is that right?
Okay.
James, did you think there was a house? Did we,
No, Corey pulled up
another
maps,
place?
seeing if there was structure
Another-
on the property.
Okay. But you guys have actually driven by it, correct? So we know
Yes, sir.
the Structure.
No structure.
Okay. So any other comment on this land bank auction?
Like it was a structure.
I'm sorry, on the state land auction section, I'm going to move forward. So we have requests for qualifications, and I'm going to let Jonathan tell you how that went. We had a meeting last week. Jonathan, can you do that, or you ready to do that?
So as he was saying, we met with developers, I think it was around the end of February, and we had 16 or 17 contractors that showed up for our meeting. We had a good discussion. So we opened it up for submittals to our RFQs. and I got 6 responses that submitted something, and you can see those submittals on this piece of paper. It's front and back. I only got 3 that were complete submittals that met the requirements that we wanted to see. One of the biggest issues that came from that meeting, I guess it's not an issue, but one of the qualifications that we had asked for was for the contractor to be bonded. Of the people that were at the meeting, obviously there was only 3 companies that had bonds. That would be Olympus Construction, Bailey Contractors, and Halsey Thrasher Harpo, Tim Thrasher. They submitted their information, and then the ones on the back obviously submitted something, but they, in some way, shape, or form, were an incomplete submittal. And so this is what we had asked for. What would be the next step? I would like for...
Before you move forward, could you just reiterate or maybe go into a little bit more detail about what things are required to be considered?
Yes. So we asked contractors, just to highlight the top 5 or 6 here. We wanted them to have a business license, a Jonesboro business license, a contractor's license. We wanted them to be bonded, submit letters of reference, and submit this required qualification statement showing that they understood what they were getting into before they submitted a bid. And so that's, I believe, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you still have the 3 packets? I got 3 packets. I didn't get all the information in until right before this. So if y'all want to actually see the complete packet, let me know, and Jeff we can hand it off to you.
Or they can just come up and look at it.
Or you can come up and look at it.
Let me also throw this out to the commissioners, and that is that there was some discussion at this meeting as to who this pertained to. And just to summarize that, and help me if I say it wrong, but this doesn't have anything to do with let's use 827 Warner as our example. So if someone came up to the commission and said they want to purchase 827 Warner and rehab it according to the RFP that we're going to put on that property as a group, and they say they're going to live there, they want to buy it, fix it up, and be a resident in that house, this doesn't pertain to them. But it does pertain to a contractor who says they want to perhaps buy the house from us, meet the stipulations in the RFP, and then put it back on the market. We checked with the city administration, the mayor, and Heather's aware of this, and the stipulation that these contractors be bonded was their desire. And I tend to agree with that. You all may have comment about it, but I do think as a land bank commission, we don't want a half-finished project sitting there with no bond or any way to recoup that at all. So that's why that was put into the requirements. And so that's just, again, for information for everyone of what happened. We did have a lot of interest in the room, lots of questions, and I guess this paper here kind of tells you what ultimately came of that. We had 3 people or 3 entities that have done what they're supposed to do, a little interest from 3 more. So I'll turn it back to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, and we actually had more interest than just these 6 people. But unfortunately, a majority of the people at our meeting are residential contractors, and they were not bonded.
And the state of Arkansas doesn't require.
Yeah, and so, in the state of Arkansas, that's what they were telling me, is they don't require contractors to be bonded for residential projects. I didn't
No, you don't have to be. That's right.
I didn't pursue that too much farther.
That's right.
That's one of the reasons why we got 6, and of those 6, 3 were complete. And so I don't think this has to be approved by council per se. I think it could just be adopted by the commission to work with these 3 individuals.
Is there any other questions or action? Heather, you have a comment?
No, you just sent me that in an email. I feel like this list doesn't require council approval, or it would only require council approval if you were selecting one contractor, yeah, to do a project.
To approve a project.
Right,
Sell
yeah.
it. What comments and questions do you all have about this? Ray, anything? Or Jeremy? Oh,
Now, with the three that have completed or have the complete submittals, those would be the three that we'd be able to choose from for any work that we would need done or want done, correct? Or is this for people that would buy property to do something other than live in?
well, I'm going to go out on a limb here, but my understanding would be now, let's use again 827 Warner, our test case. So at your pleasure as a commission, we would put an RFP on that property, what we want to see happen there, the limitations or the improvements, and then we would float that out to these three and make public notice like we always do. And then they would show back up here with proposals, hopefully, and then you all can look at the various proposals. I would say that what we learned when we went to Little Rock is it's not always down to just price. So they may have the best bid, we may make the most money off of them for buying that property. But if they're not willing to do something with the property to improve the neighborhood, it goes back to our guidelines, right, that y'all were discussing earlier, then we would want to, maybe you might choose another group depending on what they're offering to do or what they're able to do. I should say it that way. Is that right? Does everybody understand? Jonathan, you agree with that?
I think this list is it gives me the ability to be proactive rather than me having to sit in my office and wait for somebody in Jonesboro to come and ask to rehab 827 Warner. I can be proactive and call these three contractors and say, the Land Bank Commission wants to get rid of a product in our inventory, a piece of property in our inventory. Submit a proposal. What would you place here? What would you be willing to pay? How would it look? Are you interested? And then they can come and submit proposals. Just because they submit a proposal doesn't mean that we have to accept it, that we have to sell it or anything like that. But without this list, I'm just sitting in my office waiting for somebody to come in and want to buy from the inventory.
How often do we go back and submit RFPs or
RFQs.
So how long are we, if another company decides they want to be interested or one of these?
Well, the other day we had talked about doing it at some interval. The other day when it was brought up here at this meeting, we talked about it yearly.
Okay.
That may be too far apart. So
It's probably realistic, I would think. I just was wondering how long. Yeah. Okay.
But I do think there needs to be opportunity for others to get involved as we get busier.
Well, the more you get, the better the price,
The
hopefully.
better the price and the better the quality of work.
Absolutely.
everything.
Yeah, agree.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure I understood what Jonathan told me. So this list here, if we have 5 lots down at Bridge Street, and we want to develop those 5 lots, or we want to just sell them, are these the preferred developers, or can we sell it to anybody that wants to pay buy 5 lots?
Anybody can come in my office, and as long as y'all approve it, we can sell to anybody. The problem is I can't tell you when they're going to come in my office. So I need a mechanism for me to be able to go out and solicit requests.
And I guess I would throw in my understanding, again, this is a question, if someone does show up and show interest, there are 2 things. One, they have to probably go through the same vetting, thanks for that word. And then the second thing is that they would have to be submitting a proposal for, say, the Bridge Street, Dennis, that you brought up, that meets with your approval of what they want to do with the property.
Do we need to make a motion to accept these 3 contractors and move on?
Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, that's a second, and from Jeremy, you're the motion, and Dennis is the second.
Yes.
Anybody opposed to these 3 contractors for any reason? Say, so we've accepted these three. Okay, thank you. Now, you have anything you want to do with the staff report, Jonathan? Or the
I just-
inventory list?
I just point out that everybody's been talking about the budget and the money that we have to buy stuff. We've already spent, if you notice, we don't really have 25,000 or 30,000 left. If you look at the agenda, we've got $9,179.40 in land and improvements. That's where we're at year to date.
Jonathan, there is something I saw from the minutes last time from professional services. There was 30,000, and on this report, there's $33,055.
Yeah, I got that on the minutes. It was a typo. I should have pointed that out when you accepted the minutes. I forgot all about it. But the one that's on the professional services is actually it's the correct one.
The real number?
Yeah, it's the real number. It's straight from Springbrook.
So we need to correct the minutes accordingly.
Amend the minutes to where,
Well, just correct them. It's a typo, you can correct it. Okay. So I'm going to move on. Is that all you have to say about the staff report? So we're going to move on to letter B. This is Carlos Cruz. Mr. Cruz is a Hispanic gentleman that we've been negotiating with. And I would like you to at least consider both of these together when you think about them, although we'll have to act on them separately. I'm going to let Jonathan explain where these properties are and what's transpired so far.
all right, so I'm going to start with the new information, which is the information in the Clippy packet that I put together here. This is Mr. Cruz. The agreement that's on the very top, you'll see, before you even open it up, on the very top, you'll see Mr. Cruz has agreed to sell his properties, his lots, which the addresses would be 112 North Bridge and 108 North Bridge. But really, it's three lots that were replatted into two. But that being said, he's agreed to sell his land for $16,000. And he also wants to take possession of the house that's in our inventory, which is 115 North Drake. That's the house that was donated to the land bank. After closing costs and everything, the city had around $1,200 into this house. So he wants $16,000 plus he wants the house to be donated to him, and he owns the houses adjoining 115 North Drake. So he wants to take possession of that house, rehab it, and in exchange for that, he'll give us, or he'll sell to us, his lots on Bridge.
Is it my understanding that that house would come with an RFP to him, that how he needs to rehab that at some minimal level?
That's not in the agreement that he agreed
But
to.
that's in the land bank's way we do business.
We could sell it that way. We could word the contract that way, and I'm sure he would agree to it because that's what he
What
approached
he
me
wants to
about.
do anyway.
Yeah, he approached me about rehabbing it anyway. He's wanted to own the house for a while, but the owner, he couldn't get in contact with him. Anyway, long story short, that's the offer that's on the table is $16,000 for his property on Bridge, and he will also take 115 North Drake, and if y'all want him to, obviously he's going to rehab it to some extent.
Let me also ask Jonathan to go ahead and talk about the next acquisition as well, because if you think about these things together, it becomes a little bit more interesting maybe.
Before we
I'm
move
not
on.
moving on. I'm not moving on.
Oh,
You
okay.
Come back.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
looking at that last page of that packet that he had with the judgment against Mr. Cruz.
Mr. Cruz, I spoke to him after we got the complete title commitment back. He has agreed to sign, I believe I put it in the packet, he signed an agreement stating that he will pay for that judgment. That will come out of the $16,000 that we are paying.
Okay, so
Popped up
because in like the
title
third
search.
paragraph, it says April 15, 2009, and in the last paragraph, it says April 15, 2019. So, I mean, I know that's kind of splitting hairs,
No, it's important.
Yeah, it's some,
but I mean, the difference between penalties and interest in 10 years compared to, a month from now. But I mean, I'm guessing that this judgment was filed in April 2019. and was recorded on the 30th. So, I mean, I'm not sure what the penalties and interest are, but if he's paying for it, that wouldn't be our
Problem.
beast either. But in paragraph number 1, by signing below, you're confirming that.
I did not bring the complete title commitment with me. I am going to say that it was, well, I don't have to say, I know it's from 2009 because Mr. Cummings owned it prior to Mr. Cruz.
This is a little bit on me, Jeremy. I told Jonathan we would not deal with him unless he agreed to pay all interest and penalties and the judgment, and he has agreed to do that, and that's why it's open-ended in the bottom paragraph that is from 2009 forward. So that would, in my mind, kill the deal if he doesn't do that.
I just wanted to make sure that last paragraph wasn't,
Wasn't
paid for, but on or before April 15th, 2019, because apparently we're not there yet, of course.
We just need to probably.
We just don't want the city or the land bank to be at risk for a judgment that was not part of the original negotiation. And this judgment came up to us when we did the title search. So that's why we found out about it. Which, accolades to Jonathan for being thorough and getting the title search, et cetera. But we don't want to, we're not on board in the negotiation we had with Mr. Cruz to pay his penalties or his interest.
We probably need to fix the typo, though, and have him re-execute the document.
Yeah, I'll send it back to him, and what I'll do is I'll correct the 2019 aspect of that, and he'll sign it. He works in Texas, so it takes us a couple of minutes to get paperwork back.
I would invite any commissioner that would like to come and negotiate some of these properties because he was in Texas, he couldn't get here. He'll be back in 2 weeks, but no, he could be here tomorrow, and it was just an interesting conversation.
That kind of makes me worry, too, about the fact that if he's in Texas and he's that hard to get a hold of and he's never here in town.
Well, he is.
All of a
We
sudden,
actually
we're going
saw
to give him a house.
We've seen him well, keep in mind, too, I mean, I think I'm right, Heather, about this. We put an RFP on the house with a time limit, and if he doesn't follow through, then we get our house back and continue on with our plans. But, I mean, I think there has to be some way to ensure that people do.
Yeah, checks and balances.
Exactly. So let me move just down the page for a second, and this will bring up something to you all that you will remember, and this is with Mr. Vernon Wood.
It's that house right there. That's it.
Yeah, that's the house he wants to rehab.
And Mr. Cruz currently owns this White House adjoining. And he also is in contracts right now with Dr. Coleman. He owns the 2 undeveloped lots, or he's paying Dr. Coleman for the 2 undeveloped lots right here. So Mr. Cruz, at the end of all of this, if it's approved, he would own from this small house right here all the way up to.
I mean, honestly, the house that he currently owns doesn't look any better than the house that we own. Right?
The way the parameters work for the land bank, it says that we cannot sell anything to somebody with an open code violation. There are no open code violations. There are no open code violations. Right now, there are no open code violations.
Doesn't look great, but it is mowed now.
What is that house worth? What do you think that house?
Which house?
The house that we're talking about giving, what is Jeremy's, what is that house probably worth?
Well, we have an appraisal.
According to the county,
About 29 with
it assesses it like, I think it was 36. I feel like that's a little high. I don't know.
High. It's way high.
$8,000. I mean, here's my question.
Say 20% of that. What is that,
Here-
7,200?
Yeah, here's my question. I remember we had a discussion and we turned down a couple of lots on Bridge Street for a price. So what you got to effectively,
Well, we haven't turned them down yet.
but what we got to figure out is we're giving $16,000 plus the value of that house for 3 lots on Bridge. At the end of the day, correct. And now I understand if we tie it to, he's got the caveat is he has to come back and. But because I remember I thought Mr. Herndon I thought there was a discussion and we Did we discuss what we thought the value of those lots were on Bridge Street at one point in time?
We're about to get into that in the second part.
Well, let me bring the second thing up, and
Yes,
then
we did.
that's a very valid discussion. So we're back on 108 North Bridge. This is Mr. Vernon Wood, you'll remember.
Right.
And I would caveat, I'd say this, I'd comment a little bit ahead of this conversation that Mr. Cruz was much easier to deal with than Mr. Wood, okay? And the other thing that's complicated this just a teeny bit, just to throw it out, and if you read Keith's article in the paper, you'll see this already, but the Vet Village announcement has made this area a little bit more interesting when you talk to these people. So, Mr. Wood, we have a contract right now to buy, is it 2 lots, Jonathan, if I remember correctly?
Yes.
And his price is $6,000. He's pretty firm with that. Our logic, Ray, for this and everyone else was on the Mr. Cruz's lots. We're paying $5,300 each. So we're in the $4,000 to $6,000 price range is where we are on these various lots we've talked about. Now, we paid for something, our very first lot, Mr. Pacheco. And then you come back at this house, and in my opinion, we put an RFP on that house so that it has to be rehabbed within a certain time period in a certain way. And that'll maybe encourage him as well to do something with the house y'all were pointing out that he owns next door. What we'll have, if y'all approve this, is we'll have, don't hold me to the exact thing, but we'll own all the property at the foot of the bridge on both sides, save one house, and we're in the process of locating that lady. She's hard to deal with as well, just because it's hard to find her. That's going to be the nature of the beast in these kind of properties. It's going to be difficult to find people, even more difficult to work with them at times.
So the question on that.
Let me throw out one other thing that you all need to know, and I'll just leave it at this. There is another property 2 blocks down. I'm going to leave it at that for negotiating purposes, that we have appointments to talk with those people the very near future, which would give us, if you think through this.
I've got a picture, a map here.
Yeah, but so you have a bunch of property at the foot of the bridge, and you alluded earlier to somebody developing that into something, right? Then you move down the street 2 blocks, and you have another bunch of property that we can get our hands on, or encourage a developer to develop in a certain way. Then you've got the Vets Village, and then where you are now is to the Wolverine property, which is there's some interest from some pretty big entities in town to do something really nice with that property. If you move past that property, there are a group of developers that have some property down further on Front Street toward the Edge Cafe. Now, if you remember how this all goes, if we were successful in having, I think you mentioned this, Ray, earlier, these properties at the foot of this bridge as an anchor, then we're all kind of aware of what's going on across the tracks for development. This could be the kind of, this in my mind meets the very crux of why we're here as a land bank, making a huge impact in an area that right now is all industrially zoned, and the only thing going on there really is people, street people are having to live under the bridge there. So that's just a little bit of logic. I don't know if it holds water or not.
But here's just my concern. You got 3 lots, so let's say we establish a value of $5,300 a piece on those 3 lots. So you're giving that. You're also giving a house that, let's just say, is worth $8,000, and you're basically giving him that. I understand that you're saying we're going to have an RFP from him on what he's going to do. My concern is whoever it is, let's just say anybody, they go in and they put some paint on it, and they put a new window in the front, and they rent it out for whatever they can, and they don't really, because we can sell that house for $8,000 to anybody that'll go in and put some lipstick on it. So I'm concerned. I want to figure out how we protect her. And then if the person goes and borrows money on it, then we just can't go take the house back. I'm just trying to figure out how that works, how we're protected. We can get the house back if he doesn't perform and there's a lien on it elsewhere. I'm not saying I have a problem with it. I'm just trying to, how do we protect and we actually get it back if that person, whoever it is, in the future, if they don't perform?
I will look at that. I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I'll figure it out and I'll let you know.
I mean, I'd feel a
I
lot.
think we're getting our feet wet here again, right? Because this will be our first RFP and it's got to be designed in a way to meet all those criteria you just brought up, no doubt.
I love the idea of somebody buying that,
The one
fixing
thing
it
I
up.
would say about this house is, in the back of your mind, keep in mind it was donated. It didn't cost us but $1,000 to have it. And so I guess I'm going to say this out loud. If you have a conversation with people negotiating these properties, and that was the carrot that got us to even sell it. And so it begs the question, I think it goes back to what you said earlier, what are you going to do with all this? Well, these properties are in our area of impact, in our area of revitalization for sure. They're right smack in the middle of that corridor. There's other interest. And I will throw this out as well. At the next meeting, we plan to have an engineering firm make a presentation to you all so that we can get feedback about a master plan from the foot of the bridge all the way to the Edge Cafe that we wouldn't necessarily, we would maybe be the driver of, but we wouldn't do the whole thing. Obviously, we can't afford that at all, but we can.
Let me give the nuts and bolts of this, and then we can pick specific questions if we want. But essentially, if you execute the contract with Mr. Cruz and we move on down the agenda,
and Mr. Wood.
and we execute the contract for Mr. Wood, which would be the two things that we have left to talk about, the land bank would be paying a total of $28,000, and we would own, I think, 7 lots at the foot of bridge for $28,000. And you can see on the picture here, I've got it highlighted in green what we would own. Long story short,
Now, and let's pass this up and down.
they should have one.
Okay, good.
Long story short, and you should also have a copy of this. I worked with Daryl and I worked with Michael Morris in engineering and planning. And if you look at your big pieces of paper, the replats, if we executed both of these contracts, we could replat the property that's owned by Mr. Wood. We could replat that into this. I don't know if you can tell it. It says MAPC replat approval. It's got a total of 8 lots. It's going to be zoned, I think this one was under RIU. It would be very similar townhome, loft type development, and a very similar thing across the street. We could.
So this is just one concept, right? This is not anything that you're buying into today, but it's just one, I guess, example of that this has been thought through a little bit for some potential use of this.
We could potentially get 16 units, 8 on either side of the street. And we're thinking, based off what staff would like to see, obviously it would be y'all's decision, but we would like to see 2 or 3 story minimum apartments, townhomes, whatever you want to call them, parking garages on the bottom. And if you keep in mind, as we was talking about earlier, that bridge on the bridge on Bridge Street at some point is going to have to be addressed. And the idea that gets pushed around most is it's going to be turned into a pedestrian walkway.
So this must
I'm with you. My only concern is I think the idea in the beginning, we would give that house to somebody if we know they're going to dump $120,000 in it. But my concern is we own this lot, this property adjacent to it, and this person just sticks some lipstick on those 4 houses and slaps them up for cheap rent, and then we've cannibalized our other lots. That's just my only concern.
I think it's a valid concern, and I think that's where we come back with Heather and a couple of you guys that have the expertise, and we write the RFP in a way that we can assure that. And I'll just say this to you, in the negotiation, again, trying to be complete with everybody about what's happened, Mr. Cruz brought up, I was thinking I might do, I can't remember what, a body shop or a something on these properties that we're trying to buy. And I kind of said that I thought that would be a difficult sell to the city. Of course, right now it might be an easy thing to do, but That's the same fear you had, right? So we're trying to put together a group of properties. And I would throw out one other premise. These properties are worth a whole lot more as a block than they would be individually as we're picking them off. You know, we're trying to pick them off, I guess is my comment.
And that's,
Is that logical?
yes, sir. I think where we're going down the road, you say getting our feet wet, is the last thing we want to do is in good faith hand over property to somebody and make them a deal on it and then them not perform on the other end. And so we want to, and I'm not saying that will or won't, but I know there's a lot of people, there's differences in developers and a developer, and then there's also a person that just may put lipstick on something and just maximize the profit. But just want to, if we're trying to revitalize, we just want to be careful, and I'm sure we can we want to be careful, because if they go and borrow money on it, then you're dealing with the bank too. So,
And I'm about to have to excuse myself to get back to work, and I apologize. But one last thing, would it be possible for him to sell us his other house and then us negotiate with Dr. Coleman on the lot next door?
Dr. Coleman, and I'll ask him that specifically, but when I had this conversation with Dr. Coleman,
I'd rather have it.
he said that the only way for that contract to be canceled or voided
Right.
is if Mr. Cruz misses payments.
would
Mr. Cruz has not missed payments.
would Mr. Cruz entertain just selling other houses, or no?
Well,
Just take my word for that.
I will ask him, but here's my only concern
No,
on
you're
that.
wrong. I mean, if you ask him anything, you've reopened this negotiation. This was really difficult.
If we're concerned about the budget, right now we're at 28,000. I don't mind talking to him, but I don't know where it'll go from there.
So, I mean, is it,
I think what you have before you is you have two contracts that if you exercise these at the end of the day, and this is not, again, no disrespect to Ray's opinion about this, because I agree with everything you said, but at the end of the day, you'll have a block of property that's worth a whole lot more than when we started out with single lots. And I think that we have to look to Heather and Carol to put the RFP together in a way that, should he do what Ray described with that house, that we get it back, and the bank thing has to be worked out. None of that has to be figured out today, but these contracts are, Mr. Wood's contract is about to expire, and so if you want to kind of protect this block of property, we might want to try to do something today.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I don't have any problem with entering into the Mr. Woods contract at all, but what's been said today is that there want to be some restrictions on Mr. Cruz's contract. Mr. Cruz's contract right now has no restrictions. If we approve it today, he's not got any restrictions. You cannot approve that contract in its present form, or he can do whatever he wants to with that property.
And I know we're concerned about what he's going to do with that property. I can just say this: we're working closely with code enforcement, and this is just a general statement on all of it, right? If there's a code enforcement issue and it is presented, we're working with code enforcement and it'll be addressed. So if you have concerns that he'll just, I mean, yeah, could somebody put $120,000 into this house and make it, look like a brand new structure? Maybe they would.
Not there.
I don't know if they would or not, but I can tell you that, both staff and code enforcement, we're not going to just give him this house for him to do a whole bunch of things that go against current code.
I agree that there's nothing in this agreement that says this conveyance will be subject to an RFP, and I think that needs to be in the agreement.
Well, the original agreement that we have, he had no, he wasn't going to get an RFP or anything. It was just, we're giving him the house, and he wanted to own it.
In the discussions that I personally had with him, I told him that we would expect him to do certain things with the house, and based on Heather's comments, if you want to however you want to handle this, but we can go back and have an addendum signed and make that a stipulation of completing the deal. In my opinion, I think that has to be in writing.
I don't think you can do that.
Well, I'm just saying not today on his contract, perhaps.
No, I'm saying, I agree with you, Doc, that there can be an addendum, but an addendum requires agreement by both parties.
Right.
And if he just takes the position.
And if he doesn't agree to it, then we don't have a deal. It is that.
Can we accept those contracts contingent
I
on
don't-
him signing an addendum?
I don't think you can do that.
Well, I wouldn't suggest to you, after hearing your comments, that you would approve this contract today.
I would
I
not
would bring
approve
it
it.
back to you guys.
No.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Mr. Wood's contract. Do we still have a requirement that for Wood, liens on property that are not buying?
Well, those liens are actually going to be removed by the city, so the answer is no. And the reason they're going to be removed is they're over 10 years old and they're not enforceable. And so that's no longer a point.
Just so I'm clear, it sounds like I need to correct the issue that on the lien that says it was filed in 2019. I need to correct that to show 2009. And then I also
Yes.
need to attach any stipulations that the land bank is going to place on this property to the new contract as well. Is that correct?
For Mr. Cruz, you're talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you void the entire contract and rewrite those stipulations?
Well, we haven't executed the contract, so it's not a deal yet, correct? Okay.
My only question would be, what stipulations do you want me to put in the new one?
Well, let me
Or I'll
ask
send it to
the timing issue here for just a second, and that is, as far as Mr. Wood goes, do we have another month we can bring this back up one more time?
Yeah, we can push this off one more meeting.
Give us some time to correct some of these things. Would that be fair?
Now, I'm not talking about Mr. Wood's contract.
No, but there's, in my mind, I'll just say this, in my personal opinion, there is no point in executing Mr. Wood's contract without Mr. Cruz's, because you're not, then you've got a block of property where you have what Ray suggested, that, you know, Mr. Cruz continues to own the property right across the street. He can do whatever he wants to within the industrial zone of it. So I think, in my thinking, you want to have these together, or not at all. That's just my thought, personal opinion.
Then in that, from just a pure legal standpoint, then we should not approve those contracts today.
Right. And that's
We should
why I
go
was-
bawant to the drawing board and decide what stipulations we're going to impose
We got another
and
month.
what conditions we want to make, we want to impose upon the buyer of our property as to,
Or even the house we're not selling to him, but the house we're giving, we still want it to have. So let me ask this question. Do we still have time on Mr. Wood's contract?
Yeah. Mr. Wood's contract will expire June 3rd.
Okay,
And
so
so
we're
as long
good.
as we're April or May and we're moving on with it, I can get it pushed through city council.
So let me ask this question of the commission then. Could you give us some guidance about what you would want to see as an RFP on this house? Basic one would be up to code, correct?
Yeah,
Which
I
is
agree.
pretty extensive when when the building official can go inside the house and write up all the things that are wrong with it code-wise. That's a good list to start with. That's, within the law, it's the basic things you want to do.
Well, the one next door's not, I mean, there's no way it's up to code. It either,
But
we're just
but the
there.
difference there is the building official doesn't have any way to get into that house unless there's a safety issue. But our house, we own this other house, we can have them.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I don't know, other than to make a condition that he has to meet all state and local codes and regulations as part of the consideration for us giving him that home. Other than that, I don't know what we could do as far
Is
as,
there anything else that you'd want to do would be my question, because that's pretty extensive. If you bring this house up to code, you've done a lot.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
have to be some type of a time limit on that as well.
6 months?
Some period.
I want to point this out too. So the city, if a house disconnects the utilities, in order to reconnect the utilities, the owner has to go to inspections and get a reconnect permit. Part of that process would require that if it's not up to code, it must be brought up to code before they can reconnect. So by default, if we're not going to attach anything above and beyond what's going to be required by the city anyway, what more do you want me to put on this contract?
Well, I think
Because the
Jeff hit it on. You have to put some time limit, reasonable
We
time.
could put a time constraint on it if that's something you want to see. He has to reconnect the utilities in a year or 6 months or a week, whatever you want to put. But outside of that, unless y'all guys want to tell him that, you know, he has to paint the house a certain color or.
No, I don't think we have to get, I don't know that, my opinion is we don't micromanage it.
Yeah.
But again, we do want it as a minimum that it meets all the state and local.
And
codes
those
fire-
processes are
Fire
already.
codes, building codes.
I think it would vote us in a really bad way if we didn't insist on it being a safe, up-to-code house that we've had in our possession.
Sure, I agree. And 6 months might be a reasonable time.
Do we want to include or allow him to demolish and rebuild? Or do we want to say that this is a rehab?
If he.
It's a rehab.
If he, again, there's a system already in place that will prevent that. If he, let's say we don't put anything and he decides he's going to take the house and knock it down. The lot's too small to rebuild, number one. Number two, it's zoned industrial. And so in order for him to actually pull a building permit, he's going to have to get a variance for the lot size. He's going to have to rezone it. There's going to be a whole bunch of hoops that he would need to jump through if he does go that route. And we could put a stop to it at any point along that process. So again, they're similar to the codes and the ordinance, you know, you have to bring up the code. There's already a process in place that'll protect us from that. It doesn't necessarily need to be spelled out in the contract, but I can put it there. But the planning commission's not going to, every rezoning that goes through, I have to put a comment on every rezoning. And we could protect our interests that way.
Other discussion or questions? Is there anybody that wants to take any action on these two items today?
Purpose of the motion, I'd make a motion that we table these two contracts until our next meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anybody opposed to tabling these until we can kind of get our ducks in a row a little bit better? Okay. So that brings us to the next item of business, which is public comment. Deanna, you're the public, I guess, and Keith's the public. Does anybody want to say anything? All right. I'll take a motion to adjourn. All right. Anybody opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you for all the candid discussion and the effort you're making to make this work.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.